The human story is a story of energy. Every civilization that has risen, every invention that has transformed the world, every piece of art that has touched the soul, all of it has been fueled by energy. Among the many energies that move within us, sexual energy remains the most potent, the most mysterious, and the most misunderstood. In modern culture, people are encouraged to scatter and exhaust this energy recklessly. Pleasure has been divorced from responsibility, and instant gratification has been marketed as freedom. Yet for those who awaken to the truth, there is another path, a path ancient mystics, sages, and warriors knew well. This is the narrow path, the disciplined way of harnessing sexual energy rather than squandering it. To walk this path may seem strange in a world drowning in indulgence. But in reality, to be on the narrow path is not strange at all. It is normal. It is in harmony with the laws of nature, the design of the body, and the higher aspirations of the human soul. This essay will explore why the narrow path of sexual energy is the true normal, how it elevates a man or woman above mediocrity, and why its apparent difficulty is actually a hidden blessing. Before understanding the narrow path, one must recognize the nature of the broad path, the road most of humanity walks. This broad path is characterized by indulgence, excess, and unawareness. The culture of release. In modern times, people are told that frequent sexual release is natural, even healthy. Movies, music, and advertising normalize lustful living. Pornography makes intimacy a cheap commodity. Men and women are trained to think that they are powerless before desire, that indulgence is not only normal, but necessary. The cost of dissipation. What is rarely spoken of are the costs. Chronic release of sexual energy drains vitality, weakens willpower, and diminishes creativity. A man who constantly wastes his seed feels perpetually tired, unfocused, and restless. A woman who scatters her energy in shallow intimacy loses depth of presence and becomes entangled in emotional chaos. Why the broad path is popular. The broad path is easy. It asks nothing of you. It requires no discipline, no self-awareness, no restraint. It flatters the ego, feeds the flesh, and numbs the spirit. It is attractive precisely because it demands no growth. But what seems like freedom is actually slavery, a slavery to impulse, a slavery to base desires, a slavery to the opinions of a society that celebrates weakness. The broad path may be wide, but it leads downward. History is filled with men of brilliance who destroyed themselves through lack of control over their sexual energy. Emperors, artists, leaders, and thinkers undone by indulgence. The narrow path defined. The narrow path is not repression, nor is it denial of sexuality. Rather, it is the wise channeling and conservation of sexual energy for higher purposes. Retention and transmutation. In practical terms, the narrow path often involves retention of semen in men and preservation of vital sexual energy in women. Instead of compulsively releasing, one learns to circulate this energy, to convert it into strength, focus, love, and creative power. This is what the yogis call brahmacharya, what the Taoists referred to as the alchemy of the inner elixir, and what many spiritual traditions revered as chastity. Not mere abstinence, but mastery. Discipline of desire. To walk the narrow path is to discipline desire, to place it under the command of the higher self. It does not mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means becoming so strong that desire no longer dictates your choices. You dictate its expression. Purposeful sexuality. On the narrow path, sex is not reduced to animalistic release. It becomes sacred, purposeful, and intentional. It can create life, deepen love, or be sublimated into creativity. It is not wasted but invested. The narrow path is called narrow because few walk it, not because it is unnatural. In fact, it is the most natural way to live, for it aligns with the deeper laws of life. Why the narrow path is normal. At first glance, discipline with sexual energy may appear abnormal in a society that glorifies indulgence. But in truth, walking the narrow path is the most normal state for a human being. Here's why. Normal according to nature. In nature, energy is never wasted. A tree does not blossom endlessly without producing fruit. An animal does not mate recklessly beyond its purpose. Energy is conserved, directed, and used for survival and growth. For humans, to scatter sexual energy constantly is to live in contradiction with nature. To conserve and channel it is to align with nature. 2. Normal according to design. The human body was designed with immense care. Sexual energy is not merely for reproduction. It fuels the brain, nervous system, and higher faculties. Ancient traditions taught that semen is concentrated life force, containing vital essences. To retain it is to strengthen the entire system. Therefore, walking the narrow path is simply living in harmony with the body's design. Normal according to spirit. Every great spiritual path has emphasized mastery of sexual energy. Christ spoke of the narrow way that few would find. The Buddha overcame temptation under the Bodhi tree. Yogis, monks, and mystics throughout history recognized that the doorway to higher consciousness required control of desire. This is not abnormal. It is the original way of the soul seeking God. 4. Normal according to human potential. Genius, creativity, and greatness often emerge from those who learn to sublimate sexual energy. Nikola Tesla, Isaac Newton, Leonardo da Vinci, all men who walked the narrow path in their own ways. They understood that to waste energy on indulgence was to rob themselves of greatness. The narrow path is normal because it is the path of human excellence. The challenges of the narrow path. Though the narrow path is normal, it is not easy. Its difficulty is precisely why it is called narrow. Temptation and loneliness. A man who refuses to indulge will often feel alone, surrounded by a world that mocks his discipline. Friends may not understand. Temptations will be everywhere, on screens, in conversations, in environments that encourage indulgence. The narrow path requires courage. Internal battles. Sexual desire is primal. To master it is not a one-time decision, but a daily battle. The mind will rationalize, the body will crave, the emotions will pull. To walk the narrow path is to become a warrior, not against sex, but against weakness. Misunderstanding by society. People on the narrow path are often misunderstood. They are accused of repression, of being unnatural. Yet this is projection by those unwilling to face their own enslavement to desire. But difficulty is not a curse. It is a gift. The narrow path tests, refines, and strengthens. Its trials produce character. The rewards of the narrow path. Though difficult, the narrow path offers rewards beyond imagination. Vitality and strength. Retained sexual energy builds vitality. The eyes shine, the body radiates strength, the mind becomes sharp. A man on the narrow path feels a reservoir of energy that others cannot understand. Clarity of mind. When sexual energy is not wasted, the mind becomes calm and focused. Mental fog lifts. Ideas flow with clarity. Decisions are made with strength. Magnetism and presence. Sexual energy, when retained, radiates outward as magnetism. People feel it unconsciously. A man who conserves his seed carries an aura of confidence and power. A woman who preserves her essence shines with grace and radiance. Creativity and productivity. The greatest artists and inventors understood the link between sexual energy and creativity. When transmuted, this energy fuels art, innovation, leadership, and greatness. Spiritual elevation. Above all, the narrow path leads upward spiritually. The same energy that can create life can also create higher consciousness. When channeled upward, sexual energy awakens the inner centers, expands awareness, and brings one closer to the divine. Throughout history and myth, the narrow path has always been symbolized. Samson lost his strength when he squandered his gift with Delilah, an allegory of wasted energy. The Knights of the Round Table swore purity on their quest for the Holy Grail, symbolizing the transmutation of desire into spiritual pursuit. The Taoist sages practiced inner alchemy, transforming sexual essence into immortality. Warriors and monks alike disciplined their sexual energy to sharpen their power. These stories remind us that the narrow path is not new. It is the eternal path of the awakened. Walking the narrow path is not merely an idea. It requires practice. Awareness. Recognize the power of sexual energy. Do not see it as an enemy, but as a treasure. Awareness is the beginning of mastery. Retention and moderation. For men, this often means periods of semen retention. For women, it means not scattering emotional and sexual energy in meaningless relationships. Transmutation practices. Meditation, breath work, exercise, and creative work help channel the energy upward. The goal is not suppression, but redirection. Purpose and mission. Without a higher mission, discipline becomes empty. The narrow path makes sense only when tied to purpose. Building, creating, serving, and pursuing greatness. Community and support. Though few walk the narrow path, finding brothers or sisters who share the journey can strengthen resolve. Why few walk the narrow path? If the narrow path is normal, why do so few walk it? The answer lies in the nature of human weakness. The desire for comfort. Most choose ease over growth. The power of conditioning. Society has conditioned people to think indulgence is normal. The fear of difference. To walk the narrow path is to stand apart, and many fear being misunderstood. Yet greatness has never been for the majority. It has always been for the few willing to walk the narrow way. The narrow path is freedom. Ironically, what appears restrictive is actually liberating. On the broad path, people are slaves to desire. On the narrow path, desire is placed under control. This is true freedom. Not the freedom to indulge, but the freedom to choose. A man enslaved to lust is not free. A woman addicted to validation is not free. But the one who channels sexual energy into creation, love, and higher purpose walks as a free soul. The world may tell you the narrow path is strange, but it is not. To be disciplined with sexual energy, to conserve and channel it, is not abnormal. It is the highest normal. It is how nature intended, how the body was designed, how the spirit ascends. The broad path is crowded, noisy, and filled with destruction. The narrow path is quiet, demanding, but overflowing with reward. To walk this way is to embrace true strength, vitality, and purpose. To walk this way is to rise above mediocrity. To walk this way is to reclaim your birthright as a creator, a warrior, and a divine being. The narrow path may be lonely, but it is never empty. For those who walk it carry within them the greatest treasure, the undiminished, radiant power of sexual energy.